open the meeting. We'll call the Regional School Committee to order at 6:33.
And I will call the Pelham School Committee meeting to order at 6:33.
And unfortunately, we're not calling Amherst to order tonight because the Amherst chair neglected to account for the fact that the town clerk's office closes at 4, and so I didn't get the meeting posted in time. But any votes we take tonight, the Amherst School Committee will take at our meeting next week. I think there's only one on the agenda, and we will vote that on Tuesday. Sorry.
Thank you. Okay. So I did not actually receive any public comment. Is there anyone here that came to make public comment? No. Okay. CPAC, would you like to present for us, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I thought we'd start just by introducing ourselves, and then we'll do our presentation, and then we'll be happy to take questions at the end of our presentation. So my name is Angelica Maria Bernal, and I'm a parent of 2 kiddos, one in Caminantes and one in the middle school intensive needs program.
Hi, my name is Sharon Ruth. I have one child at Pelham Elementary and another child in the Ames program here at the high school.
Hi, I'm Ellen Jedry-Gadera, and I have 2 kids, both at Crocker Farm.
Hi, my name is Maya Eden, and I have one kid at the Pelham Elementary School.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Curiali. I have one student in 5th grade at Fort River in Caminantes.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, so in the interest of time, 2 of us will be doing the presentation, which it speaks for all of us, and then for the Q&A, we will all be happy to take your questions.
Thank you.
So good evening. The 5 of us here tonight are the steering committee for the ARPS Special Education Parent Advisory Council, or CPAC. After witnessing year after year of our special education programming being the target of extensive budgetary cuts and hearing the discussions surrounding special education, it is crucial and our legal mandate to provide the superintendent and school committee with our perspective as parents and caregivers of students with disabilities. We want to first begin by thanking you all for your incredible advocacy over the past few years. You have been tireless supporters of our students and have spoken out both at the town and at the state level. And we are greatly appreciative of you showing up for all of us at ARPS. So thank you. In the spirit of supporting your advocacy, tonight we plan to share what special education is about for us, some of the processes that impact the delivery of supports, and our recommendations for moving forward. Our perspectives, we believe, are key to helping school committee make more informed decisions about students with disabilities in our district. So let me begin by first a background information. CPAC exists as the central vehicle for representation of parents and caregivers with individualized education programs, IEPs, and 504 accommodations. According to Massachusetts general law, and I quote, "The school committee of any city, town, or school district shall establish a parent advisory council on special education. The parent council duties shall include, but not be limited to, advising the school committee on matters that pertain to the education and safety of our students with disabilities, meeting regularly with school officials to participate in the planning, development, and evaluation of the school committee's special education programs." Now, through monthly meetings, coffee chats, and communications, ARPS CPAC connects with parents and caregivers of special education students in our district. These include students in the general education setting who have IEPs or 504 plans, students, as you see in our slide, who receive special education services through one of the many programs such as, for instance, the Amherst Early Education Center, the preschool, the Ames program, Building Blocks, ILC, ESP, SPP, PIP, and Connections programs, as well as Summit Academy. These programs span preschool, elementary school, middle school, and high school, And for students with complex needs, provide programming until age 22. Students who receive special education services are represented in every program in the district. They are preschoolers at Crocker Farm, dual language students in Caminantes. They are in AP and honors classes at the high school. There are athletes on our sports teams, musicians in our band and orchestra, and English language learners. When people talk about special education students, all of these students are who they're talking about. Now, we'll turn it over also to Ellen for the next.
Over the past few years, the number of students served by special education has grown significantly in our country, in our state, and in Amherst. This growth, which now totals over 900 students in ARPS last year, accounts for a sizable population, making special education learners a significant constituency and not a marginal group. Percentages of students with IEPs constitute 25% at the high school, 31% at the middle school, 24% at the Amherst Elementary School, and 23% at Pelham, and an incredible 68% at our preschool. 68% of students have IEPs in the preschool. While we know that part of this growth is a reflection of the high reputation that our special education programming has been known for in years past, we also know that as needs have grown, budgets have not kept up. Financial support for our programs to properly meet legally mandated educational needs of our special education students has not been adequate for many years. When students with disabilities are undersupported, it impacts other students' learning, and families are more likely to send their children to other schools, like charters. However, for most families of students with disabilities, choicing out to a charter school is not a viable option. In your handout, we've included a cheat sheet for some of the many acronyms that we use in special education, and you can refer to that as needed during our presentation. And now we would like to highlight several areas where families have felt deep impacts in special education service delivery. Sorry, thank you. Paraprofessional support. Over the last several years, we have experienced a significant drop in paraprofessional support for students due to budget cuts and not because of a reduction in student needs. The reduction in paraprofessional staff due to budget cuts has had a direct impact on student learning. For example, when paras are sick, their classroom teachers might have to be one-to-one assistants for those students in addition to teaching the entire class. There has been widespread concern over these decreases to para support staff, as evidenced by petitions and letters from CPAC presented in 2023 and 2024 to school committee and town council, including one that gathered more than 200 signatures from concerned families. During the 2023-24 school year, CPAC was consulted as part of a special education review that focused extensively on paraprofessionals. As part of this review, parents received emails with a survey that was to be about reviewing the entire program, but instead was focused, for us at least, on paras, and featured questions such as, in reviewing the philosophy of requiring additional support for students with disabilities, is there potential for students' progress to be compromised rather than enhanced? Our steering committee, which includes several people with graduate training in research methodology, found the process to be highly biased and reported it at the time to the special education director and the contractor. However, the report was produced without addressing these concerns and has been referenced as justification to reduce paraprofessional support. Paraprofessional supports are not just nice to have, but are fundamental to our students' education. Paraprofessional support are determined individually for each student receiving special education services to help ensure they have access to a free and appropriate education, also known as FAPE, and in the least restrictive environment, or LRE. Not all students require paras, but for those that qualify, IEP teams made up of teachers, specialists, parents, and administrators determine a specific number of paraprofessional support minutes that each student needs to access their curriculum and meet educational standards. These support minutes are included in the Individualized Education Plan, the IEP, a document that details the legally protective rights of students with disabilities that are mandated by federal law. Paraprofessional support is an integral part of service delivery for many of our students with disabilities and in the implementation of our students' IEPs. We are alarmed when we hear it suggested that over-reliance on one-to-one paras can hinder student independence by creating dependency. The report, the widely cited report by Giangreco advancing this argument has been vigorously refuted in recent years. Numerous research teams have found that effective supports and ongoing quality training for paraprofessionals can improve the school experience for students with disabilities. While some students may develop certain skills over time and no longer need para supports, other students may always need para support to access their education. And this determination is part of the IEP team's annual review that is a requirement of the IEP process. Paraprofessional support is often essential to providing special education services, and training is key. Properly trained paraprofessionals bring a specific skill set that complements general education and special education classroom teachers. They are not just babysitters. Evidence-based training for paraprofessionals should teach them to use prompting, fading, natural supports to promote student independence, support students who are non-speaking or use AAC devices, help facilitate peer relationships, and foster student independence and inclusion. The training should also include strategies for avoiding over-assistance that can hinder student independence while providing appropriate support. Issues experienced by our children often reflect a lack of appropriate paraprofessional training in evidence-based practice and understanding of our children's IEPs and/or learning profile. However, reduction of paras is not the answer, as this also leaves our students unable to attain the necessary supports they need to access the curriculum and classroom. We've seen this happen increasingly as a result of extensive budgeting cuts directed at reducing para support. Paraprofessionals are a necessary cost of providing inclusive education. They are low cost and high impact. They're among the lowest paid positions in the district, but they have a substantial impact on learning for special education and our general education students too. Cutting paras is inefficient, but training them well is not. High quality paraprofessional training is the answer, and not just for paras, but we believe across the board for teachers and administrators as well.
So as part of that training, I want to speak to neurodiversity affirming professional development. For the last 4 years, CPAC has repeatedly asked for one thing that has yet to become a reality in our district. We have asked for neurodiversity affirming training and professional development for all ARPS staff. We were encouraged by Dr. C's statement at our last meeting that the district would provide such training for next year. Just as Amherst is a diverse community racially, ethnically, culturally, linguistically, we are also a neurodiverse community. Our children are autistic, have ADHD, Tourette's syndrome, communication disabilities, developmental disabilities, and many others. Just as our staff have completed training around social justice and LGBTQIA, our ARP staff need training in neurodiversity and neuro-affirming practices. We believe this is needed for all staff. And you may ask, why? Because neurodivergent people are everywhere. Neurodivergent children attend our schools. A child in the lunchroom should not be scolded for the tics that they have due to Tourette's. A child with ADHD should never lose recess for not being able to focus. An autistic student should never be forced to make eye contact. A student with sensory challenges should not be subjected to a fire drill without sufficient warning. Autistic students often depend on schedules, routine, and predictability in order to feel safe and be emotionally regulated and ready to learn. Therefore, drastic changes to their established routines, as done recently in the Fort River 5th grade, should not have been done without sufficient time for an appropriate transition. We are also frustrated by our neurodivergent students being labeled as non-compliant and, quote, defiant. As psychologist Dr. Ross Green states, all behavior is communication. Compliance should not be the only desired goal, but rather students who are properly accommodated and educated to meet their needs and who are learning to advocate for themselves. And yet, this is the language reflected in the interventions utilized in our schools, which are dominated by behavioral or ABA approaches that are inflexible, rigid, and have been widely criticized by disability advocates. ABA-only strategies have our students being rewarded with bits of food or candy for appropriate behavior and compliance, working for tokens, and being secluded, sometimes restrained. Now, training to recognize triggers and response to neurodiversity affirming, relationship-driven, and collaborative approaches will result in a calmer, safer environment for everyone in the schools. It means moving away from blue rooms and towards addressing our students' needs proactively and providing them accommodations and supports that they can learn. As the literature has shown, it has clear educational benefits for all students, both in the short term and in the long term. Now, short term, these include better learning outcomes for everyone. Teaching empathy and destigmatization, which in turn decreases bullying and classroom conflict. Providing teachers with new teaching tools that could benefit all, and building a more inclusive classroom for everyone. Now, long term, the benefits will be building a strong, inclusive, and welcoming culture for all our schools. Now, had been this considered in the past, we believe that the chronic problems that have impacted the Fort River 5th grade classroom could have been averted. Examples of possible professional development we have suggested include, for instance, a panel of neurodivergent Amherst Regional High School students presenting at PD each year to share their own experiences. Training with Summit Academy staff who have been trained in the collaborative problem solving, or CPS, the Ross Green method. Autism level up training that focuses on tools and strategies to support regulation and understanding of neuroaffirming approaches. Neurodiversity affirming training in the model of anti-racism training to be conducted with new hires, paraprofessionals, administrators, teachers, and staff at key points during PD days. Ultimately, providing appropriate training across the board will help transform our schools in ways that are crucial at this juncture, both in terms of our school environments and also budgetarily as we face upcoming shortfalls. It will be proactive rather than a reactive approach that is at once cost-effective and in the long term will reduce out-of-district placement and lawyer fees that have significantly inflated our school budgets in the past few years. It is also a key strategy we urge you all to incorporate in the upcoming 6th grade academy transition, as it was not incorporated in the Mix It Up program in Fort River.
So another critical problem we've identified is communication in our districts. And year after year at our CPAC meetings, parents bring up this issue. The problem is multi-level, so we'd like to outline it in the ways which lack or insufficient communication is experienced by families in the district. First, within schools, parents have raised concerns about a communication void, the black hole. Specifically, insufficient communication or information from providers at their school and lack of responses to emails. At the beginning of the year, parents often experience a lack of communication about who their children's providers are for services like OT, PT, speech, who is their contact person, who is their case manager for their child's IEP. This varies by school and by case manager and provider. Parents have also raised concerns about the lack of information regarding transition opportunities for their students and early communications at the beginning of the school year when there are changes in staffing. To improve school communication between families and staff, we'd like to make 3 recommendations. We'd love to see quarterly updated school directories so that parents have contact information for teachers, specialists, IEP case managers, et cetera. For example, the middle school staff directory right now is from September 2024. Directories should have staff titles. At present, all teaching, special ed, and service providers are currently called teachers in our directories. And we'd also love to see better descriptions of available services and special education programming on our website. A second critical area we'd like to highlight are issues with communications between the Student Support Office, or SSO, and principals and administrators in ARPS, including the superintendent. This is a serious problem that we most recently raised at our CPAC meeting in November, as SSO and critical personnel impacting special education have not always been included in key decision-making that directly impacts students with disabilities. One example is the sixth grade academy and special education programming. We were previously assured that specialized programming such as aims and building blocks would be replicated for sixth graders and separate from the seventh and eighth graders. But as of Friday, we learned they would be joining the existing program at the middle school with the seventh graders. Another example of the communication disconnect is the plan to address the complex and longstanding issues impacting the Explorers fifth grade class at Fort River through the Mix It Up program. Introducing this program late in the year has already caused upheaval and dysregulation in some students in both Explorers and Caminantes. And today we learned of the resignation of another teacher. What we find that is incredibly problematic is that the formulation and implementation of this plan was done without the input from the Director of Student Services. Most recently, we also learned that the Director of Mental Health and Behavioral Health, Maureen Fleming, was not consulted prior to providing advice to Fort River parents on how to address concerns with students impacted by this transition. On Friday, Ms. Fleming spoke about this exclusion and stated she had submitted her resignation. This is now, by our count, the 15th resignation or departure of key personnel in the last 2 years. And this impact of the loss of institutional knowledge and years of experience is going to have a direct impact on our students and already has. So as a recommendation, we as CPAC ask for increased collaboration between SSO and the superintendent and principals and inclusion of SSO in all decision-making and special education programming.
So the next area that we'd like to talk about is inclusion. Now, inclusion is supposed to be the cornerstone of our principal at ARP's special education programs. However, families have reported experiencing significant challenges. One of the main challenges we have learned about over the years is the lack of collaboration between general education teachers and special education teachers. One example of this is during a middle school field trip last year where lack of communication and input from special education teachers led to potentially unsafe conditions for students. Another example is a middle school department espousing a philosophy of universal design for learning, yet not practicing this approach when faced with a student who did not learn in a neurotypical way. Over the last few years, we have also seen a sharp decline of the co-teaching model, where a general education and a special education teacher co-teach a class, which was an important and successful mechanism for building inclusion in classrooms and supported by educational research. Our request is therefore that we build better accountability mechanisms for ensuring inclusive practices are always considered in classrooms. Inclusion practices should be better integrated and supported throughout schools. Inclusion should be meaningful. It is more than a student's just physical presence in a general education classroom. It is in a cafeteria or in the playground. It is about ensuring that all students feel they belong and are valued at school and not just being physically present in the classroom. Inclusion also means carefully considering field days, field trips, and school events in collaboration with special education staff to ensure meaningful participation for all students. Inclusion also means full access to the curriculum, for instance, with Caminantes. It is critical that equal weight be given to disability inclusion principles and practices in conversations about DEI. Information about disability and neurodivergence must be embedded in the general curriculum to normalize differences and acknowledge disability as a type of human diversity. We know that there are some administrators, teachers, and staff at ARPS who are doing amazing work around disability and neurodiversity inclusion. We would like to ask the district to support more sharing of best practices, success stories among the staff at different schools. We also ask that the district recommit to the co-teaching across all grade levels and continue to support current co-teaching. Now, in conclusion, robust investment in special education benefits all of ARPS. The degree to which we lift up students with disability is the degree to which we lift up all. It is also cost efficient. We applaud and thank your incredible advocacy over the years in support of strong budgets for our programs. And we now look to our town council to fully fund the school committee's voted budget. Thank you for your time and this opportunity to present, and we are happy now to answer your questions. Thank you.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for that. I know how much went into it. Are there questions, comments from the committee? Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you for that. I think I noted during a campaign event in the last couple months that none of our policies mention neurodiversity, neurodiverse, anything like that. So that is something we can change or we can consider changing. And that would be a strong signal to the entire system that we need to, as you say, expand our understanding of diversity and how we support that full range along many different factors, definitions. Thank you.
More of a comment than a question, but from my own personal experience, there's nothing that changed my family lives more than reading Ross Green's book. We had spent so much time with all of those little reward systems, and I was just so relieved to have somebody explain to me why they never worked. So I just really want to support and thank you for bringing this forward, because it really was, there was not one singular thing that changed our lives more than that one book, or my life.
Excellent. Go ahead, Irv.
Perhaps one of the most difficult things that any education system faces is providing for the education of a diverse population. When people think about diversity, they think about color, ethnicity, but they forget about behavioral. They forget about a large numbers of people who are out there. My daughter, when she was in 6th grade, came home and said to us two things. I'm never going to eat meat again, and I'm going to get a doctorate in cultural anthropology. She was neurodiverse, and in the first six grades, we struggled. But this kid would get up with a smile on her face and go to school anyway, a big smile on her face. But we decided that at that time, coming to middle school was going to be a challenge. So we pulled her out and sent her to a private school. The challenges that we faced then and we're getting ready to face in middle school, when I hear you talk, I'm thinking, you know, I thought things had changed a great deal, but apparently they haven't. But these are challenges that we all have to embrace, not see them as some kind of complaints, but as challenges to do better. And we can do better. We can do better. It doesn't mean that it's easy. It is not easy to deal with a neurodiverse population, and I certainly, for one, know. But the challenges are worth it if you stick with it and have a plan, and that you really value it. And I know that this is a value that we have in this school system. I know that Dr. Z and her staff have this. This is something that we know that we can deal with. And the thing is, and I'm hoping that all of you know and understand and can appreciate, we hear you. And we thank you.
Yeah, sure, that's
So I
fine.
have a question. One of the things that we,
Yeah, the microphone though.
one of the things that we referenced in the report is this, in our presentation was this paraprofessional report that was done a couple years ago now. And I'm wondering how familiar you guys are with it. So is anybody had no familiarity? Okay. That seems like an issue. That seems like something that, if this report was done, like, you should be aware of. That's a good example of like communication. How can we address this kind of thing?
Go ahead, Anna.
But you just said that it was completely debunked and that it was, like, the information contained in the report was trash. So if we haven't heard of it, maybe that's a good thing?
Okay, fair enough.
All right, so, oh boy. All right, Sarah, Deb, Rachel, Tim.
Like, I don't know. I think I have seen it, but I don't recall what the intended audience was. I suspect it wasn't the school committees. Maybe it was for the Student Services Office. I don't know. I'm sure there are many reports produced for different educational and administrative needs, and sometimes we see them, sometimes, I mean, I would say that's well outside any area of expertise, so I don't know what I would have made of it or would make of it.
Deb?
That's a problem. And I have experienced it too. I went into Central, I don't know, a couple weeks ago to try to find some documentation that's not currently online. And we don't have the staffing to keep those things up to date. So if it's on the internet and you sort of know how to search for it, you can find it. But there's an institutional knowledge that I feel like has been disrupted, not just by the turnover, but also just in terms of practices of school committee. It was disrupted, and we're still getting back on our feet in terms of normalizing practices within the school committee. That's my experience. So I don't have a great answer for that, but I recognize the problem.
I think one of the things that we're interested in is that this report seems like, so it's accessible, and it seems like it could be used, or it seems like to be suggesting that ARPS would like to reduce the number of paras. And so, given that background, we get concerned about how are things being sort of set up to justify that kinds of decision, and we get worried that a report like this, which is debunked, will nonetheless still be used to justify budgeting decisions like that. That's the worry.
First of all, I'd like to clarify for the school committee that this report was an appendix of my entry findings report, and so it was presented to the school committee prior. And to my knowledge, it was presented to the school committees prior to that. Second of all, I would like to say, for me, all data, all reports, there is research for something and research against something. I have not seen where the report was debunked, so I will not say that it was debunked publicly. I have heard from CPAC their concerns about the report. I have read the research for and against providing one-on-one supports, especially when a student may have grown out of that need. For me, the report was, my understanding was the then director had procured the services to have the report to actually do a para-educator review of the district. And I think the concern that was brought to me was that how the research or feedback from the community didn't present to how it was presented in the report. But the report does have some information around concerns of the number of paraeducators or the dependence in terms of some students, or even how paraeducators are identified in the IEP process. So for me as a superintendent, all data for and against something is useful depending on how it is, but it doesn't drive how we apply services in a district. We apply services in a district based on student needs. I believe last year we actually avoided paraeducator cuts as much as possible. And for this year, we actually, whenever a student identified the need or the need came up, we actually made some serious adjustments rather quickly to ensure students have what they need. That included hiring, I believe, up to about 2 paraeducators in the early part of our budgeting season when we had bumped up against the contingency. That includes, even right now, looking at identifying the need for additional paraeducators at other schools based on student needs. So I was sitting back and allowing the presentation to go forward, but you guys know how I feel about narratives, and so I will not allow the narrative that the district does not value paraeducators. We do, and we want to make sure that we provide our students with what they need.
Thank you. Rachel.
Thank you all. There definitely were para cuts last year for, like, in Pelham lost 3 paras, I believe every. 2? Okay. I believe every school lost paras. I know for sure Pelham lost paras. I know as the CPAC rep and as a parent of 2 kids with special needs, there's a lot of conversation at the CPAC meetings about all of this, obviously, which is why you brought it up, but about how the conversation in IEP meetings are impacted by budget conversation. And so what I wanted to uplift, and not to speak on your behalf, but really pull out of this for all of us as school committee members, is that there is real direct impact when administrators are hearing that budgets are tight. That shows up in IEP meetings and affects decision-making in really significant ways. And our parents are like, I'm speaking also on my own behalf, parents are navigating already hellish scenes. Like, no parent wants their kid to need a one-to-one. No parent wants their kid to need that level of support. If a team has determined that they need it, and then that is pushed up against, it's a really challenging boat to be in. So as we move through and get to this budgeting season that we're embarking on, I just want all of us to really think about what the messaging then becomes to the administrators that show up and sit in meetings at the table across from parents, across from providers, and then come to CPAC and look for help, because that's what I think we're hearing about.
Tim?
Some of what I was going to ask was answered, but I guess I'm a parent who could come to the monthly, coffee for parents with kids who have IEPs. And we're looking at the middle school, which my kid will be ready for next year, and we're like, gee, I don't know. Here I am also on the school committee. And I also know that at other meetings, when you're not giving us a presentation and standing up in advocacy, there are other people sitting in those chairs, and there are other people contacting us outside of meetings with their own needs, and a lot of those needs are expressed in terms of reduce the budget. So I want to do everything I can to do everything you're proposing. How can you help us navigate the competing demands?
This might be too general an answer to your question, but I think it starts with a mindset shift about who our students really are, that they're not a separate group of people who are taking money from another separate group of people, that if we can understand that students with disabilities really do show up across the board in every aspect of ARP's life, I think that could be one step. Another piece of that is the degree to which we make these classes functional is the degree to which everybody benefits and less people choice out to charter schools. People leave charter schools. I know in Fort River, and I've watched for the last 6 years, this exodus of people who can leave. Other families cannot leave. If you have a student with certain disabilities, charter schools are just simply not an option for them. So I think if we can, the mindset shift of if we can really support students who need it, if we can value functional classrooms and really what it takes to make a classroom functional, I think in the long run we could stem the flow and make ARPS a place where people are actually attracted to rather than thinking how they're going to plan their escape from middle school.
And I wanted to thank Dr. C for the support on having, such a strong commitment for Paris. I think that the challenge is really feeling like, what are the drivers of this? And I've been at this for like 4 years as a member of the CPAC steering committee. For 4 and 5 years, I've been writing to town council and speaking here. And every single time, it comes down to when they have to cut, the majority of it is positions to para educators. And I speak from the perspective of not just somebody in CPAC and hearing from other parents, but my own lived experiences when my child has not had sufficient para-educator support. And when you're trying to, just keep up with the needs. So this has been an ongoing problem. I suspect that it is. It's also hearing, because many of us watch what's going on in these meetings, and we hear the discourses and the narrative. So it might not be a narrative reflected in the ARP school district, but it's reflected in the finance committee meetings. It's reflected in town council. So if there's any other mind shift that I ask, is I wish that many of our town councilors were here, and that we had an opportunity to educate them and to get them a sense so that we're not having to combat against them, because it's also not cost effective for our town. We want this is a town of families, not just students. We're not against each other. We are families, and we deserve a town that can educate our children. And they need to provide us with the resource to do that. And so I really hope that that narrative also, you are, elected officials, you are superintendent, and you can help us change that narrative at the level of other people that are reflecting the problematic narratives and that are making the decision makings about the budget, but say, have no concept of what a para means for my kid or any other kids.
Okay, so I have Bridget, myself, Anna, Deb, and then if anybody else who has not spoken would like to speak, and then I think we have to move on to our next meeting. We do very much appreciate you coming tonight. So Bridget.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. It really was a beautiful presentation. I have a favorite slide. I put hearts around it because it just shows our students as musicians, as, ELL learners, as honors and AP students, et cetera, because they are all those things in our schools in such a strong way. And if there's one thing I think that I really want to see at the forefront of the way we approach these learners is with the strengths-based model, because they bring so much to the classroom every day. And I mean, like, our neurodiverse students are educating our other students in a myriad of ways, and vice versa, right? So we can't be there without one another. I thought that number you gave at the front, it was never totaled up, but 923 of our students. That's how many beautiful souls in our community who are so valuable and will be here. Many of these folks will continue their future through our community. So we're building it as we go, right? And it's really important we're doing everything there. I see 2 issues that I want fixes for, and I don't know. One of them is this structural positionality issue of the student support, and that's a new model that we developed with the executive directors, but it seems to me like in this year, from a lot of what I'm hearing from the community, is there's key decisions, whether it's the middle school schedule or the Fort River shift, where the needs of the special education students weren't considered robustly enough as those things were rolled out. So that I feel like that's by state law a position that the school committee has to approve, because it's considered such a high level and central position in the district. And so I just would say, like, at every meeting that those decisions are being made, it's important that the person with that role is, like, really robustly a part of it. So, and the second thing that came up that I noticed, and this is just something that keeps bothering me about the budgets, is we'll have like the budget season and we'll be looking, and the co-teaching positions were restored to the elementary school budget 2 years ago. And so that was before Dr. Z, but still with some of the same staff in place. And then yet, when the school year rolled out, some of those positions were still cut. And so I'm really concerned about how we make our decisions and then how those pieces come through and how that can sometimes impact our most vulnerable students, right? So those are just things I'm thinking about. and really want to do. One final thing is I would love for, and I'm not on policy committee, so I'm out of my lane, but I feel like we need to be looking at the policies around restraint, seclusion, and the, I don't even like the word behavioral. I feel like it's like too rigid, but like the types of ways that things are structured so kids can be successful, like how are we formulating that in ways that these, I mean, I'm trying to like use neutral language, but I'm thinking words like draconian, like these very intense practices. And the district was at Fort River years ago when I had a preschooler under a lawsuit by the Disability Law Center for the restraint and seclusion practices. And I was part of a group that worked really hard against that. And so seeing those things bubbling up again and become standard practice and moving away from more of that model that's really looking at the whole child behaviorally. I don't know, I'm just saying, thank you for bringing this forward. Thank you for bringing these issues up. I do know the high schoolers do present back to teachers in PD Day, which is really nice, and the Ames teacher at the high school is a big leader in that. But I think that all those types of conversations among teachers, and especially the paraprofessional training and in the positive ways of supporting the students to engage and be included is important. So thank you.
I was going to, but I'm gonna let you.
Okay, so I was on the list next. So one of the things you have listed on here is the sharing of best practices and success stories. So we have heard a lot of things that have space for improvement. What are some things that are going well? Right, there are kids that are being successful in lots of different ways and in lots of different venues. So can you share some success stories with us about things that are going really well? It doesn't have to necessarily be your personal children, right? Obviously, I'm not asking for that, but like general, we have this thing and this is going really well. Like, let's continue this practice. So.
I'm happy to go.
Excellent, yes.
I love sharing happy stories.
Yes.
Because, we all need a good message of hope. But I think at the beginning of the year, many of us sat into the award ceremony for Kate Westifer, who was recognized with the top teaching prize. Kate Westifer is near and dear to my heart. She is the teacher for the ILC program at Wildwood. My child was in the ILC program from kindergarten until when Kate took over, and it was a sea change as one of the parents that nominated her for that award. I was really happy to speak to the ways in which one teacher and bringing new practices can really be a visionary, and the ways in which also our district can really have visionary teachers really blossom. Kate works with our intensive needs students. Many of our students are non-speaking and have AAC devices. She was such an advocate that she really transformed gen ed teachers' classrooms and even Wildwood and the culture at Wildwood. So her transformation in education were not just restricted to the impacts it had on my child, but just the culture of Wildwood as a whole. I would see at open house the AAC, the devices all over the walls. At the beginning of the school year when they had the parade, many of my son's classmates had signs that had different symbols that he and other classmates recognized. It was that kind of teacher that made a huge difference, and the program is amazing, and you see from the amount of families that are part of that program. So, I don't know who else wants to speak of.
Although my family is no longer part of it, I want to highlight the preschool and the incredible staff at the preschool and the preschool director. My oldest started with a different preschool director, and we saw kind of a sea change going on to the next, my next youngest. So the work they do is just, it's really phenomenal. And I think they really are a model for the rest of the district. They are also, I just have to say this, they are stretched so thin. And they basically incorporate all of our specialized programs into their programs. So Ames, Building Blocks, ILC, those are all in preschool, essentially. And our amazing staff, they are working with so many different, children with different needs, and just it's just an incredible place. So that's definitely a success story in my mind.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Bring on the success.
So again, my student is at Fort River, and obviously Fort River has been spoken about recently for many reasons. But I do want to highlight the teachers at Fort River. My child has been so deeply cared about, and so deeply supported, and so deeply thought of. And the teachers who are working in a very, very difficult environment show up every day under unbelievable circumstances, and are still replying to emails, and are still willing to take meetings with me, and are still willing to learn about my child, which is, you know, the way that my child needs to be supported might be different from the kids on either side of him, right? So they're very, very willing to take in information, and not just the classroom teachers. I want to point out the specials teachers, the critical role that they play in being this bridge throughout every year after year after year. They're anchors. They provide these anchor relationships that help our kids, and I know neurodivergent kids, all kids, but neurodivergent kids specifically, really require anchored, stable relationships with safe adults. And so for me, the thing that is my saving grace are the teachers at Fort River.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
Happens all the time. It's just not long enough.
Yeah, just echoing what Jen said, I want to give a shout out to the middle school art teacher because my son had a really rough transition into middle school, and it was the art teacher that it was just amazing to see his feedback, because we'd get notes from the teachers and you could just see that he cared about my child, which didn't come through with a lot of the other comments, but it was just amazing to know, like, okay, this teacher gets him, cares about him, and it made my kid want to go to school, like, oh yes, it's an art day, right? So yeah, don't discount the specials teachers. They're amazing.
Great. Thank you. So I have Anna, Deb, William, and then we'll say thank you.
So I just want to have one clarifying question. I think you mentioned 2 different reports. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same report. So there's the Genrico report, which was debunked. Is that what you said?
That's a study that is often cited
Okay.
to say, you see it time and time again, that says that that para-educators, paraprofessionals are a hindrance to students there.
But that's not the report that you were talking about when you said the
That's a study.
The study.
The report is
the report was the one that was commissioned
internally.
internally. Okay, thank you.
Deb?
Yeah, so one of the things I like to do is go back and look at all documents whenever I can find one. And in the early 20s, 21, 22, there was the development of a liaison between school committee and Amherst Town Council. That idea, I don't know what happened to it, but I came across a reference to it, and they were talking about doing that. So I don't know where that fell off or what happened to it. It could have been COVID, I don't know, but that might be an opportunity for us to establish some better communication and maybe facilitate some communication with our advocacy groups.
William?
Thanks for the presentation. As policy chair, I was going to say that someone brought forward the policy that Bridget was talking about, and my mind went blank.
Jake, restraint and seclusion.
Correct, yes. And so I just emailed Dr. Z today. I know there's some laws changed this summer, and so I just emailed her telling her that we need to really look at our policies, and so we're going to coordinate that, just to let everyone know. And then the other thing is, as I was sitting here, MASC, which is not always accurate, but they have a database of policies for many different school districts, and also what they suggest. There's not one that they suggest for neurodiversity, but East Long Meadow has one. So I would say that might show up on a policy meeting going forward, conversation. And so if they're open to the public, so I'll make sure we invite y'all, but that might be something that it would be beneficial to have other people's input on. So that's all.
Great. Thank you all so much for coming and
Thank you all.
enjoy
Thank
the
you.
rest of your evenings. We're getting there.
But yes, it may not be in the cheat sheet.
It's not.
It's not, yes. Many.
But SSO, the Director of Student Services in our district.
Student Services Office and Director already, it's two directors, student services and by definition. One's the location, the other's like, yes, it's providing new parents and you need, can be there. That's ready.
All right. Next up, we have our conversation of the strategic plan, Portrait of a Graduate. Dr. Z.
Good evening, everyone, and I'm going to try to walk through this quickly. I know that I believe the Regional School Committee got the full document previously in a update about a couple weeks ago, and I know the Joint Committee got it, but I don't plan to go through the 40 and 33-page documents that I sent. I'm hoping that you had a chance to glimpse through it. What I wanted to go over is I created a brief handout, and I really just want to focus on the feedback, overarching next steps. And so Seth, go all the way to the bottom and then we'll come back up. So the overarching next steps is we want to gather committee feedback. We've also sent out a survey to staff. That survey went out last week to gather some of their input on the milestones, benchmarks, and goals. So they have the overarching strategic plan. And then our goal is that between November 15th and December 5th, we're able to put in the final edits, incorporate any feedback we get from the school committee this evening, feedback we get from staff, and then prepare a final version so that we can have a vote in December. And the goal is to try and roll out in January. So let's go back up to discussion questions for the committee. Clear things I wanted to kind of gather your input on, and we're going to take notes are, does the draft reflect the collective vision for ARPS in our 3 districts? Instead of reinventing the mission and vision, we actually based it off of the policies that are in there that already established the mission and vision. We worked to align the overarching goals with the goals that the committees have in their policy. And we also wanted to go through what parts of the plan do you feel show the strongest progress, or do we need to further refine? What efficiencies? We did have a budget analysis, and this is a part of it. It's not only about the budget for the strategic plan, but it's about to give us as a district some suggestions around different areas that we need to look at, or potential, the one thing I would like to say is potential opportunities for efficiencies. So we had about, I think, 2 to 3 days of strategic budgeting where the team, various individuals were in the room giving feedback, answering questions, talking about the budgeting, to include SSO. I hope that CPAC hears that, and making sure that we had a clear vision, clear picture of the full budget. Shannon, Kate, the finance team, and so from that, what was done was an analysis of our current budgeting system to give us some feedback, and then to give us some input about, with the goals that we've identified as a community, these are not Dr. Z's goals. These goals actually are, I would say, community developed. Some of the school committee members here, before they were even school committee members, were in the works of the development, so their parents and different individuals. I actually purposefully had limited interaction because I didn't want anyone to say, this is Dr. Z's plan. No, this is Amherst Pelham Regional Public Schools plan. And so I just would like to open up for questions and to have a discussion about it and to hear feedback. Couple things that highlighted and I already knew. If we go to suggested efficiency opportunities, that's the next page, Seth. I put potential savings, but in his document for budgeting, he talks about really on page 4 is the first page, potential opportunities for efficiencies that we should look at. And different things that we should kind of really delve into in terms of our fiscal management and fiscal programming. These are not, some of them are not new for us. We know the impact of the health insurance. We understand what our charter school retention strategy is. And we also talk about what are some of the prerequisites. And for us to achieve a lot of our efficiencies or even to achieve a lot of these goals, one of the key things is that we would have to also look at the impact to our central office. For example, you can switch to the next page, Seth. We would have to look at dedicated personnel for data and accountability. A lot of things happen because of data. A lot of conversations that everyone's asking for data. That really comes from our IS. So we are actually like the 5 to 6, two individuals who deal with state reporting, deal with programming, deal with also pull all of the data reports. And so we developed a dashboard, but that in itself needs monitoring and also work. So really one of the suggestions was to kind of have focused individuals for data and accountability so we can have clearer data. Looking at our pre-K and SPED expansions, as you can see, especially in pre-K, that allows us to meet some of our obligations in terms of what's coming up, but also looking at our special education program. We do not have dedicated funding specifically or enough funding for professional development. That is not something that we put a large amount. And when I say a large amount, like sufficient enough, I think we've used different grant fundings to kind of pull together a lot of our professional development. But in terms of a basic school district, one of the key things that they invest in is the training of their individuals. And our budget doesn't always have that as a part of it. We find through our grants, but even that is limited. So for example, Welcome in Schools, we had to apply for the mental health grant to pay for that. That's $40,000 a year. So, you know, we have to also look at a priority area in terms of a critical investment as professional development of our staff to help with our retention and attrition. And then looking at how we use our equity and our resources. So I'm gonna pause so we can gather some feedback and then we can move forward.
I want to start by saying thank you for all of the work that's happened with this and all of there have been so many people that have put so much time and so much effort into what is turning into a very thoughtful plan. So I want to recognize all of the time. I know I've gone for a couple of days at a time, and there are many other parents, teachers, central office, all sorts of people have put a lot of work and effort into this. So I just want to take a minute and recognize all of that work that's gone in. For this, what's up here, one of the things I am very appreciative of, especially when we are going forth and having our conversations with our towns and whatnot, is the prerequisite of what our capacity is to do the things, right? So how stretched our, fiscals are, our business offices or our human resources and the central office as a whole. We ask a lot of them all the time, and they come through. And so I think having, especially this suggested efficiencies, with what it would mean to be able to do these, I think is very helpful to help frame those conversations moving forward. Tim.
Thank you for this work. Thank you also for providing a discussion handout. That was great. That's really helpful for me. All right, I love what you're doing. I especially want to call out the critical importance of investing in central office. That's the roots, and we can't have a good flourishing tree without the roots. So I applaud that. There are two things I'm curious to know more about as concepts that could find a place in a strategic plan, and I don't know that they do. The first one, I'm going to steal Bridget's thunder because this is something that I've learned about from her. But attention to capital expenses as a means to increased operational efficiency and performance. That's a bit abstract, and I would leave it to Bridget to give it, but I think, like, especially having just, like, personally put myself through a crash course on facilities construction projects for the middle school roof, I know that there are more important facilities costs coming, and most of those are must-dos. We must do them. There may also be, bright ideas that we can add to our facilities to make them work better for the entire district. So maybe something about that in the strategic plan, I think, would make sense. The other thing I'm curious about, and this may simply already be in there, I'm sure it's something that's on your mind quite frequently. It may be in there and I just don't see it. But it strikes me that, I don't want to lose sight of how our school district, like many school districts, has been through a very hard time for a number of years. And I sense for staff in general, but, frontline staff teaching in classrooms, the folks who are not leadership or administration, I wonder how we can invest in the culture for all the schools. And that's going to require HR capacity, right? That comes back to central office 100%. But I think there's some healing needed. And I don't know what that needs to look like, but if in a strategic plan, I would look for something about culture, investing in the culture of the staff, providing for them, not like, foisting a culture onto them, but like helping them overcome the stresses that they have endured.
So two things. I don't disagree with the first one. I think that I can reach out to Bridget to kind of get the clearer outline of that one. We have been thinking about it. I think about 2 nights ago, Shannon, around midnight, and I were having a text conversation, and I think it was midnight, where she had these ideas and I had those ideas around how do we kind of shift some of our use of our building and engage other partners to kind of build revenue once we increase our capital, so we can definitely, or address our capital issues. And then the second one, we actually have under milestones, under human resources, as well as we have, so I think that's goal 5. And we can probably put in a strategy in there. And then there's also, I can't remember the exact goal, where there's a strategy for professional development and learning. Usually I've seen where under professional development and contractual services, we would put in those types of opportunities. So we would need to appropriately budget for that.
Right, of course.
Anna?
So I think my comments align a lot with Tim's. That the two areas that he talked about, just a little bit more, like the capital and the facilities strategic plan. There just wasn't a lot of information or thought about infrastructure and how that fits into the strategic plan. And I think we have seen how deferred maintenance has trashed our buildings and caused really incredible costs that if we had taken more sort of like done a more preventive plan rather than reactive plan, that maybe we could have saved ourselves some costs by taking care of the maintenance as it comes up and not waiting until it gets really, 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 really bad and not fixable to have to completely redo it all. And I feel like maintenance is always the lowest priority on any budget list, and it really shouldn't be because it has consequences later. And then the second one was the culture, and I didn't see anything in the strategies about inclusion. And so just sort of like on that note, culture and inclusion and just welcoming and equity for all types of students and not just some populations, yeah. But thank you, this is a really great start.
No, this
a
is
lot of
great.
work, good.
Thank you. I went in and I saw on page 34 of the draft plan, there is under human resources in the milestones, it says ensure building maintenance meets acceptable standards. And then there's some things there, but I think we can expand out on that as one way. And then I'll go back in and I'm sure there's something here about culture, but I don't want it to just be culture in terms of tied to professional development. I want it to be culture in terms of staff, morale, and everything else. So I'll definitely include that. And inclusion, I'll make sure it's called out.
Sarah?
I'm very excited to see this plan again. I mean, that it's come to the committee. Yeah, I attended several of the workshops, and they were always really stimulating. So I have a question and then a couple comments. I'm just curious, like, how many educators and staff people participated in this? I know, I mean, because I'm sure a lot of the work happened outside of those two-day workshops. It must have gone on, and, you know, a lot of people working out to develop the strategies and the measurables and all the many details of the plan. And I'm just curious, like, would you say 50 people, 100 people across?
I would
Any
not
idea?
say 50. Okay.
I mean, I don't want you to do any work. but-
So that's one of the reasons why we sent it out for feedback, so we could get the feedback from the committee and the staff, the broader staff, before we have a final version. And so, to try and get more voices in the room, like there were educators that came in at different points. There was one point where I think at one point to get them in the room, we even offered, like, we will pay a standard rate. like we want you to come in, because some of them were outside of their work hours.
Right.
So right now, we've sent it out to everyone and said, like, hey, provide us feedback. I believe the last day is either Wednesday or today. And then if we don't get it, we'll extend it and re-advertise. But I wouldn't say it surpassed 50. I would say
Okay.
less than 50.
Okay, thank you.
Over time.
All right, so then a comment about the critical investments. So much of the strategic plan involves collecting data to know, so that you know if you're making progress on your strategic plan. So if you don't get that information, then it just sits on a shelf because nobody has any idea if you're accomplishing. So I'm very much support the critical investments that allow the district to find out how it's doing. And are we implementing what we said we want to implement? Is it faithful across all classrooms or all schools or all grades or whatever? Yeah, we have to, if we are not going to have somebody or somebody's, designing the measurement, methods of collecting the data, whether it's, percentage, which is easy maybe, but then there's more qualitative sorts of data. And I know in one of the workshops, we had a lot of opinions about surveys, and because they can be well designed, they can be poorly designed. So anyway, I will really support the investments that allow us to collect the data and analyze it and answer questions and help us make progress. And then at this point, just a small observation. It looked like goal 5 when y'all got to goal 5, it kind of peters out a little bit. I mean, it's the last thing, so maybe it's not quite done. I don't know. So a little more there, I think.
Jenny?
Yeah, so I was really focused on goal 4, which is about family and community partnerships. Through my work, I have had the opportunity to visit lots of school districts around the country, including school districts in rural, very poor communities that are doing amazing things through community and corporate partnerships. And I think that we often talk about, we talk a lot about the budget, and we often talk as though the local and state budgets are the only sources of revenue. So, you know, we talk about the state's not paying its fair share, and our costs keep going up, but there are a lot of other resources out there, and I think we actually need to invest in fundraising, in somebody who can really do that work for the district in a strategic way, because I think there are a lot of opportunities out there that we just don't know about because we don't have anybody whose job it is to find those opportunities for us. But, I mean, I've been to schools like in Talladega that, you know, it's a very rural, very impoverished community, and those schools they're incredible because they've been really strategic about finding resources and finding the right partnerships. And I think when I look at goals like the one around real world learning, that, you know, it's not just about those partnerships for the funding, but it's also that they're going to enable the students to do real world learning, to have those connections to 21st century career training and opportunities. So I would just really encourage that. I think there's also a piece to it that I've seen school districts that do a better job of leveraging funds within the community from parents who do have the means to support the schools. And I think I can't even tell you how many times I have bought pizza, or it feels very scattershot in our district. And people are constantly sort of raising money for different things, but it's not coordinated. So I think we could also, if we were strategic and had somebody whose job it was to focus on fund development, also look at ways that we could include the families more who have the means, because I would much rather support a capital campaign that's going to go towards providing more staff than buy another pizza.
So most school districts have a dedicated, or someone who's a dedicated grant writer. Our grant writer right now is our director of finance. Like Shannon also writes our grants. So a lot of times when things come in, she's working with Tanya, she's working with Marta, she's working with like the different directors. So they're then sitting down to also write grants and to do research. So we do miss opportunities, and then there's a lot of philanthropy opportunities out there if we have a researcher to do that. So I understand what you're saying.
William?
So I have a couple questions. One was, what parts of the strategic plan are realistically implementable, or like can we do in FY26 given the current staffing data and PD capacity gaps?
Can I highlight those parts and get them to you?
Yes.
Because I want to say that the budget analysis came after the plan was written. So as we sat to write the plan, a lot of it was written with the ideals of who was in the room.
Right.
And the analysis was done in a way to say, to do it as effectively or as you would want to do it, these are some things that you need to consider. And then these are some inefficiencies or efficiencies that you need to address. But I think for the most part, there are parts that we would definitely be able to execute once approved. So I can go through and highlight those parts.
And then, I guess it's kind of goal 4. I see where there's this diversity aspect, but then it brings back past trauma of you know, an elementary school inviting families for their cultural diversity potluck, so to bring a dish that your family takes, and as a gay family, I'm like, what do we bring, martinis? Like, it just kind of, so it just kind of, the cultural diversity to a gay family, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know where that lies in that. So I would just want to make sure that our diversity is more open throughout the strategic plan, and it's not just about cultural diversity, because I feel like my family is huge. We're very diverse, but we're not a cultural diversity. Like, I just read it differently. So I would say maybe go back and look at that on the diversity piece, because I'm not saying that's your intent, but I feel like that's kind of what it states, and other families may read into that. On the fundraising thing, I think it's a great idea for the fundraising. I know at past schools that I were at, we had like huge stores. Like, I've never been in a school district where you couldn't buy gear. Like, here at this school, you can buy gear once a year, and it's only open for 2 days, and then forget it, you can't buy a t-shirt anymore. Like, all the other schools, districts I've been involved in, they had a school store set up in the library that was open every day. They had a volunteer parent that would like order stuff, front stuff, give money back to the community, you know, all that kind of stuff. We don't do any of that here. I mean, maybe the elementary schools do it, I don't know. We don't do it in the middle school or high school. So I really like the idea of fundraising, and I think there's ways to do it with volunteers and staff that are here. It doesn't have to be so grandiose.
And we did ask for a fundraising policy and clarity under our gifting policy.
That was well, I'm saying like
and sponsorship.
A store. Like, why do we not sell? Like, why do kids not all have Amherst t-shirts? Why do we not sitting here with
I can find
Amherst
out.
T-shirts?
I can find that out, but I just want to make sure.
The cure.
Okay, so see, we have some.
Once a year,
Right.
$20.
Anyway, it is great work, and those are my only notes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Margaret?
Just a couple of things. Tim talking about culture and the staff, the frontline staff, and I'm wondering, is there any way to actually solicit from the teachers what would help them? You know, what would they like to see? I don't know if we do that in any way, but I think that might be a really helpful thing if they would be willing to come, assuming they would be willing to come forward and talk about that. I just wanted to comment on the data and the real need for another person in the IS department. There are currently, I believe, 2 people. Is that right?
Who deal with like the data and programming and back end? Yeah.
I mean, they do everything IT for the whole district.
Yeah.
And data is becoming such an important thing that
Yeah.
was that right?
So I want to clarify. There are about 8 people total for the 3 districts, to include a director. About 2 are Christy and Cody. They handle all the data, programming, back end, not just like school data. They also handle like ASAP and frontline, and so they handle all of that. 2 people.
Mm-hmm. So if we really want to invest in data in the district, I feel very strongly that we really do need another person. And then something, because in Pelham we have a number of people who have chosen to choice their students out of the Pelham Elementary School. And for a long time, I've always heard what a great school Pelham is, and people want to send their kids to Pelham. So I think we have a number of school choice out kids in all of the schools. And it would be good if we had a way to find out why. I mean, we know some of the reasons why, and we heard some of it tonight in the presentation. So I don't know how we go about that. And I think if we understood why people are choicing out their students, we could perhaps identify some key things, some key priorities that we could institute or reinstitute some things in the schools that would bring students back and families back.
I don't think there's anything that would stop us from contacting parents and asking like if they would have a 5-minute conversation with us and share that information. It's just identifying who would be able to do that on the team.
Right, but there might be a couple of things we would find that if we did this, this might help us bring some of those people back in to the district. That's it.
All right, so I have Deb, Tim, and then Bridget, and then we should keep moving along.
So I'm having a bit of cognitive dissonance with the earlier part of this evening. So I love looking for places to save money. And I think, you know, your efficiency opportunities are great. But where the savings is getting translated to doesn't fit into the picture that I've been creating in my mind, or the school committee, or the districts that I've been sitting in for the past almost 2 years now. When we're talking about not adequately staffing schools, about we're telling our town council, our select board, that we're making appropriate reductions in staffing as our staff decreases, and that the cuts that we've made over the last 2 years, the $1 million last year, the $1 million the year before, are coming at the expense of our students. And looking at this kind of difficult budgeting season ahead of us, and in particular in the Amherst School District, looking at a school town council that has not committed any additional funds to running the 6th grade school, even though it will have to cost additional money, I can't see where listening to the parents sit in front of me saying that we're having trouble staffing absent paraprofessionals and that we've lost co-teachers that I thought we had restored. I'm just having problems looking at these cost savings and not seeing the translation into protecting what we already do very well, or that we're at risk of losing.
So I'd like to clarify, because you said savings translated to. Nothing here translates to anything. What I did was pull out some facts or some things to highlight from the reports. The suggested efficiencies are things that we need to look at regardless as a district.
Okay.
Those potential savings are estimates that I ran as numbers, and then I looked at the prerequisites and everything. This came from the report.
Okay.
The critical investments were suggested critical investment to implement the plan that we have written right now.
Okay.
So nothing that is there says, oh, we're going to save this
Okay.
and spend it here.
Okay.
That's not what it is. It's saying, hey, we went through your whole budgeting process and different things with you. We analyzed all your documents. We did this. These are some efficiencies you may want to look at. And hey, these are the goals that you have. These are some investments you may want to make. It doesn't say, take this savings and make this investment.
Okay.
The school committee, in the end, says the direction that we're going in. So I just want to make that quite clear.
Thank you for that clarification. I had another couple questions. Also, because I need these things spelled out a little bit more clearly than other people do. I'm having trouble seeing, like, the action steps. I see, you know, I see goals, I see objectives. I don't see, like, specifically what people are doing. I guess I would look for a job description of the person who are filling these roles and what they're doing beyond what, I feel like we already have data that we can use. So I'm not sure why we're seeking more data.
So again, there are two things. We have the plan,
Yeah.
and in the plan, there are like specific milestones which says we would implement this, we would conduct this, which are action
The
verbs.
action steps?
Right, that we would get done in those years.
Okay.
What the budget, again, the budget analysis and this part of strategic budgeting reporting did was it looked at our current framework, it looked at our current budgets, it looked at what we did, what we have, and it said, hey, if these are some investments that match your, and so that's impacts and measures. If you go to the back, there's a table that talks about gaps that exist, right? So it actually cross-references. If in goal 2 you want to do this, these are the implementation or the things that you're measuring. They say gaps exist, and it goes. So it really just tells you like, hey, if you really want to be tracking data, you want to do all of these things, you have a data analysis capacity problem. If you're looking at human resources and addressing all of these things with your employees, you have a HR capacity problem.
Okay.
So, if we're talking about sick leave management, one of the suggestions was look at the policy development around your attendance and things like that. So what this did is, hey, you have a really great plan with goals and milestones. These are some things you may want to take into consideration as you are implementing it. And so I think it goes back to William's question, how much in year 1 can you really do with your current staffing, right? And I'm going to say we have 4 people total in HR. And so to hear us talk about, making sure we're addressing staff culture and all of these things or whatever, we have four individuals in HR. And so I'm not here to be just saying central office. I'm also just making sure that we match it. So I hope that clarifies
very
in
much.
terms of why there's not a job description, because it's more of like it's a suggestion for
I understand.
to
So the last piece is, we last discussed this back in April. And I thought there were some suggestions that the committee brought forward, and I haven't seen those folded in. In particular, I remember Tillman speaking very clearly about wanting to see certain kinds of academic skills, and I think the rest of the committee sort of expressed that opinion too. And I don't see that in the actual portrait itself. I think it's sort of folded into some of the milestones, but I'm having a hard time making the connection between where I thought we were going 6 months ago now, and where we are now.
So I did ask that question, and what ended up happening was there was a discussion. The work went back. It was done where we pulled it out and we're able to see mathematics this, science this, social studies this. And I think it went back to the larger working group, and there was a discussion with the working group where it's kind of in there what those skills, standards, and strategies are. So we do have a version that has the subjects, but we also have this one where everyone the working group kind of felt like it's not just about the subject areas, but also, and the academics is built in and the instructional strategy. So I can bring it back with the one with the subjects on it.
The discussion in the working group is helpful.
Well, I was going to say, I was part of that conversation, which
Yeah.
was a lot of it, and this is about what is attainable for all of our students, right? And so are all of our students going to be successful in AP Calculus 17 or whatever the most mathiest math is? No, they're not, right? And this is about after you leave high school, you have a skill set to be successful in your next and future steps. So those pieces of like highest maths achieved and all of that was folded more in, like, not in this, portrait of a graduate part.
So that wasn't what my sense of that conversation was about, hitting the highest levels. It was just about integrating basic literacy skills, weaving that into this vision of our graduate. Not just as a critical thinker, but a critical thinker who has these specific critical skills. And again, not like AP stats so much as just numeracy, literacy, and how they manifest. I can see how that comes out in some of the goals. I just am having trouble making the connection between that discussion
So
and
like,
this one.
the first one says, adaptable problem solver who applies learned academic skills and processes to analyze problem and identify possible solutions. So and that's within the first one, talking about taking all the academic skills that they have garnered while they're in our system to be an adaptable problem solver. Is there, I guess for me, the only thing I could think of is to go back to calling it out specifically. But I also know we don't only have students, they come to us for their academics, but many of them thrive beyond academics. And so I also feel like we want to create a full picture of who our graduate is and what they can do once they leave our system. And they're not just going to be in an algebra student. They're also going, they have to take what we've taught them and apply it to a real world scenario. And that's our goal. Everything that we've taught you and we've given you and we've worked with you in and we've built you up on, you are now a productive citizen who is a critical thinker, innovative, responsible, or responsive. When someone talks or when someone sees an ARPS graduate, this individual presents in these ways. They're a skilled communicator. They take the time to innovate. And our children do this every day. So I see it. We'll have to build it in some way.
It's the conversation around it that I'm missing, not the final product, is if that helps understand.
Me, not so much, but I
Yeah,
think so.
yeah.
Okay. Tim?
So I just wanted to, boost what Jenny was saying about resources for funding development. I think that's a good idea, and we just had our Four Towns meeting on Saturday, and I heard an Amherst Town Councilor talk about, wanting to develop payment in lieu of taxes or pilot programs. So that may be an opportunity for cost sharing of that kind of resource. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but the town and the district, or the towns, plural in the district, although my town of Leverett cannot afford additional funding development resources. It's all down to Margie McGinnis. But if I see a potential for collaboration between town and district that I think could be very fruitful, especially when you get into pilot programs. They can be very technically complex and really require a lot of municipal cooperation. And I think that being able to not just talk about the impact on the district, but have someone who is working directly with the district in the development conversations with potential donors, with potential businesses or nonprofits or whatever it is, I think that could be very impactful for fundraising.
So I have Bridget, William, and Sarah, and then we need to move on.
Yeah, thanks. I just plus one to the comments on fundraising. I think, and especially grants and fundraising and partnerships with our community partners, there's a lot of potential for growth there. I would say, like, I've read all this and I feel like there's tremendous progress since last April. And interestingly enough, I felt like, because I was one of those ones who were like, where is the academics, right? I felt like there was a lot in there, but also I'm like all in education speak sometimes, so maybe like I read it in the things, maybe like appendices with those parts for the different subjects, and even with the social emotional learning and the school climate pieces, like what some of those things are more spelled out would be nice. But I really like the systems efficiency, operational thinking. I like the equity dashboard, and I really like the collaborative working groups, like teacher-led, teacher-driven sort of curriculum in that blending of academic and real-world approach. So I really like that. In terms of the capital investment to reduce our operating costs right now, because of the rescheduled school committee meeting, I'm missing a talk at Amherst College by an author who's writing on this very issue about schools, climate, And some of those elective pay systems and the tax credits, which we thought had been really decimated, some of the schools lobbied hard, and there's some pieces still there for investing in green infrastructure that can lower operational costs. So I wouldn't stop on that, and I'm glad I'm on that joint capital committee to keep pushing that idea. And the last thing I wanted to say was that schools, the sick leave, part at the end, it struck me as like really rules-based or reinforcing expectations in this way of thinking about it. And I did just hear you say, like, okay, our HR department is weak, but this is my perception. I see a lot of people going on extended sick leaves. There's burnout or inter-staff conflict. Some people are using it before they resign and all. So rules and expectations, sure. But like, what about the sort of school climate and culture where teachers feel like I'm valued, I'm autonomous, I can create things and make things better in this space for myself and the students, and like, and engage well with my peers. Like, I feel like there needs to be like emphasis on that, so everything doesn't feel like, oh, I'm getting put another top-down set of expectations, but like, I'm building and creating and part of something great. I want it, just that culture, I think that there's a lot of research that shows that is linked to the amount of sick leave people take.
So that was one of there are questions that we asked in terms of feedback, and one of them was like, what are some areas that we're missing, or, you know, how can we expand on this? And what would you like to see in it? So I'm hoping that we can garner as much feedback from staff so that we can put that in as well.
Thank you.
William?
Something I was thinking of while we were sitting here talking, I feel like every school, every district is losing money, and everyone is having budget cuts, and no one has what they can do. My husband being in the hospital field and that kind of stuff, that they have to regionalize and hospitals get absorbed in other, you know, bigger things. So have we thought about doing PD with other districts? Like doing a partnership with another district, say Hadley, Northampton, whatever, and all new hires or all new paras would then go to maybe the collaborative, you know, who knows, but like just to a place where multiple districts could pay for a trainer to then train new staff instead of having to have someone come train, you know, 5 people. Maybe we could regionalize it. I don't know, just a thought. Have we thought about regionalizing our PD so that our monies could go further if we joined with other districts?
So I would have to say that I know I have not, and I would have to speak to my team. I know, like, for example, under our multilingual program that works under multilingual administrator, we've partnered with a group of districts in terms of writing a grant and having a grant approved. So at one point, we were the lead on the grant. I think this year Hadley's the lead on the grant. And so that includes like training and different things around that. So it's not impossible. I think we've kind of partnered with different districts in those ways. So I think we could just expand on it and just make sure that one of the critical things is that Amherst and the region and Pelham have invested a lot in some past trainings. And so for a lot of our teachers, they feel like a lot of the training is not relevant to what they currently need. So what we need to build from them now is, what do you really feel like you need, and what are we seeing that's needed? You know, and a balance to that in terms of professional development. So that's one of the key things. And then making sure that when we partner with someone, that in that partnership we get a vendor, we get training that aligns to our values and what it is that we want to implement. So that would be my only fear, especially here in partnership, is that making sure that what we do aligns. How we want to find a district who's kind of like us to do that first. But I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Thank you. Final comment, Sarah.
Yeah. To maybe it was Deb's comment about like, where's the academic skills? To me, I see this as resting atop a pyramid of other documents and things. Like, we still have our curriculum standards, K to 12, underneath this. We have our graduation requirements. We have our competency determinations. I mean, this tells us where we hope to get by doing all that and more. So I don't think we need to be spelling out what we already have to do and are doing. But perhaps the document could reference those things, like, those are part of what tells us how to deliver education here.
Thank you. Great. Thank you all. Yeah. All right. So next up, we have discussion and vote to approve the 25-26 superintendent's goals. So I want to start by saying that the superintendent and the superintendent evaluation committee has worked very closely in not only developing the goals, but also while we were developing the goals, to talk about the indicators, right? So there's the 4 standards for DESE, and then there's like 45 indicators or some very high number. And identifying which indicators, how the suggested goal aligns with our policy AD, which is our mission statement, and our policy ADA, which is our broad educational goals, and including what an implementation plan would look like and the evidence that would be used to support this. The big timeline picture is for this to be approved tonight, and then we have already started having the conversation with central office. So they have started using, it's called Perform. It is part of the Power School family of things. It's a very technical term. However, that the Perform, we are able to, that is where all of the educators are, how they're being evaluated. So it's the same platform. It gets directly tied to their, so your employee record, right? So it is centralized information for everything. We will be able to use it to complete the evaluation. It will have, each goal will have the artifacts attached to it, and this is all still the development part of it. We will be able to bring that back for approval in, I think we said January? Yeah. I can double check my giant spreadsheet of things, but around then, which will include a training on how everybody can use it, which the walkthrough that we had once before, it needs a little bit of tweaking, right? Because we are reinventing the wheel again. But I think it has potential to be great. So I'm very excited about it. We'll bring that back. And we talked, so as part of looking now in the beginning, to be able to plan for that for our future, this is how we came to the goals that are here to talk about today. So Dr. Z, do you want to walk through them? And then the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee can help support filling in the pieces of the conversation of how we got to where we are.
So I do want to say.
Then we can vote.
Yes, I do want to say thank you to the subcommittee, early mornings and afternoons. Greatly appreciative, and for the feedback. I think recently I received a level of feedback from not just a subcommittee, but also sitting through the committee meetings. And my goal was to have goals that reflect the work that needs to be done, that is being done, and that the evidence that is submitted actually reflects something that would show and strongly illustrate proficiency or exemplary work, but more so that it was completed. So the first one is to complete I wanted to stick with an instructional leadership goal of completing the required administrative evaluations and making sure that 100% of my direct reports were completed. The evidence that would be completed is there's actually within Performa chart. It does not show personal information, but it shows it can show over time. And so I've committed with the subcommittee to take snapshots. I already took the snapshot the day I showed it to the subcommittee, so I have that first one. I will have a second snapshot in January for mid-year, and then we'll have one in June showing completion. And for each one, you'll notice that there's also reflective narrative as an artifact to kind of talk about lessons learned, next steps, because that came up that we also not just have quantitative, but a level of qualitative evidence as well. So that's the first one. The second, the Amherst School Committee really we have a focus on the K-6 restructuring. So goal 2 is under like management and operations. This one, whether it's coordinating staff, moving through engagements, stakeholder engagement, making sure we have staff plans. So it's a scant implementation because there's a lot to implement. And I didn't want to have a 50 or 60 page document, but there are a lot of things, but the focus is on the evidence in terms of the artifacts. So working again with the team, probably submitting project timelines and visuals, showing completions and key milestones and updated status reports, artifacts from the stakeholder engagements, whether it's the presentation deck, the sign-in sessions, to make sure that it's smart. We wanted to make sure that we are looking for 25 participants in attendance combined, so from the 2 public events. If I can show more, I will. I will say that these stakeholder events have been packed from the beginning. And so for that, we have been using Zoom. We could pull the Zoom logs to show how many people attended, and were in presence. And then again, a restructuring readiness report, the qualitative report for feedback. The third is the family and engagement standard 3. For this one, there's been a lot of conversation recently around our instructional programming at Pelham. What does it look like? How the conversation that Margaret had earlier, like why did we lose students? And so one of the things for this is to do like a program review in terms of the instructional programming. At our presentation from Tracy Novak, Rachel asked a question and she repeated it, like at what point do we decide to combine a classroom? What does that look like? And that's instructional. So kind of creating a working group to kind of dive into that, to create, have community engagements with parents, even having a couple listening sessions and trying to engage others in like, what are you experiencing in terms of instruction? Looking at our MCAS data, looking at our iReady data. It's a small school, but we still need to look at how we're applying instruction and what's happening and then creating that qualitative reflection. So that's there, and that will result in a summary and report for the school committee around just the program, instructional programming, and possible suggestions to include answering the question, when would be a good time to consolidate if we're a small school? Standard 4, professional culture. This one is kind of based on the region but can expand. It's more so pulling out the bullying prevention and intervention plan, strengthening administrator communication and follow-up. This came from the last regional school committee where there was a vote to include this in my goals. The artifacts would be an updated and approved bullying prevention and intervention plan, training records and signing sheets from the trainings applied, quarterly bullying data reviews. One of the things that in the implementation plan is committing to quarterly pulling our reviews and looking at cases and just making sure that they're entered correctly or tracked correctly. If there is any discrepancies, we work on it to address those discrepancies. The evidence would be a first version. The school committee needs to understand that a dashboard is not something that can be developed overnight. It requires making sure that programs speak to each other, and if not, taking those 2 wonderful people and having them create programming to make them speak together.
Yep.
So it's not as easy as, and then there's a dashboard. And so the first version would be presented, and then making sure that there's feedback to inform the next version moving forward. And then again, a reflective narrative that talks about just, what are the patterns observed in a quarterly review, actions taken to strengthen accountability and communication, and the next steps to improve compliance. So those are the 4 goals, and I know it's 4, but it is a lot of work.
Thank you, Dr. Z. Okay. Rachel.
I think my team really hates when I mess with the mics at Amherst Media, so maybe I can do it right. My question is around the Pelham goal, and really is just around, I think the implementation plan, I would like for the school committee to have some involvement in the implementation plan, not just receiving data, but being involved in some conversation there. So maybe that can be I would be interested in that being added. And I would love to see like parent alum or like wider parent engagement, whether that's through surveys or the working group involving more than one parent.
Bill, can you come to the athletic office, please? Bill, athletic office guy.
Okay.
No. Bill, Jordan.
Buddy. Great.
I think that's all. I just wanted to, like, in that implementation plan, if parent engagement and school committee conversation can be more integrated. I don't know if that's something to have as part of a school committee meeting, but I would be interested in a little more of that happening.
Sarah.
It's so great to see this all put together right up front. It was a lot of work, I'm sure. My only question is about standard 2. So on the second page, there are 2 indicators, 2C and 2E. And 2E is fiscal systems. And I don't see anything to the right of that have anything obviously to do with fiscal systems. Can you, maybe I just don't recognize where it would appear, but to me that sounds like everything and anything having to do with money in some way. I don't know if it's budgeting, I don't know what it might be, but in the context of this, the standard and the Amherst K-6 restructuring, how is the fiscal system indicator demonstrated?
I'm hoping I pull up the right standard, so give me 1 minute so I can explain what the indicator says. So the fiscal systems under proficient, it says develops a budget that supports the district vision, mission, and goals, allocates and manages expenditures consistent with district school level goals and available resources, and effectively communicates budget rationale to staff, community members, municipal stakeholders, and the school committee, provides regular updates on the implementation of the budget. A critical part of the Amherst K-6 restructuring includes the budgeting process, because we are consolidating, and redesigning. So I didn't want to actually miss that part in terms of what it is that would be needed to do. And then in terms of scheduling and management, it says using systems to ensure optimal use of time for teaching, learning, and collaboration as evidenced by school schedules, regular opportunities for administrators to collaborate. So those 2 indicators actually combined outline what it would take to actually implement the K-6 restructuring.
Well, if I can follow up, maybe I'm just stuck in my way of thinking, but
if you want me to remove it, I'll remove
what's
it.
that?
I said if you're suggesting to remove it, I'll remove it.
No, I don't want to remove it. I'm asking, and I don't want to delay the vote, but like just putting in the budget would be an artifact, or you said the fiscal system is a large part of that is building the budget that supports everything that needs to happen in the new schools. So again, without slowing down this process, perhaps you can toss in some extra evidence, artifacts that deal with the.
So it could go under visuals, and because visuals have IE Gantt charts, Excel, so the budget would probably be a part of that. The finalized budget or budget that we roll out would be a part of that.
Okay.
Approved budget.
Okay.
Because the approved budget would be tied to the plan in terms of the number of teachers, everything that's staffing. But if I need to, that's fine.
Can I just remind you that we talked about not the final product,
Good
but
job.
the developmental
Yes,
parts
thank you.
going into, so
Say that again.
part of, do you want,
No,
you
go
can
ahead.
speak. I don't do this very well. Part of what we can do now with this new tool is as things develop, we put them on, or they get put on board docs every month or every meeting. So it's not the final budget, but the preliminary budget or the discussion of the budget. And each piece of those gets put in as an artifact to board docs, so then at the end, they're all there. And we've seen them.
Does this have something to do with perform, though? I thought that we were going to have all these
Oh,
things in perform.
I said Power School, it's perform.
You said board docs.
Well, you know, I said I didn't do it very well also.
Okay, I'll do it. So let me explain. So I got it now, Deb.
Thank you.
So a couple of things we talked about in the subcommittee was, one, as I post and we put things on board docs to present to the school committee, to actually also say this is tied to goal 2 for me. Like, there's a place you could put the superintendent's goal in board docs. So that would kind of become like an archive situation. And then pulling those and putting them in perform as well, so that as you're walking through, you can pull that, or I can even reference at school committee June 15th, you can always go back and look. But I think your suggestion is, when I'm adding in artifacts, make sure I add in the artifacts around the budget. And Deb was saying, we said we would do snapshots in time to make sure we showed progression. So we would have like the preliminary budget from December to this, and then the final one. I got it noted.
Okay. Bridget.
So, forgive me, it's been a very busy month, and I think it's only like the 10th, so. I may have missed it, and maybe it happened in October, but I don't remember like the first read and the input on the goals. Like, it seems like it just went straight from subcommittee to, hey, vote this tonight. Was I asleep on the wheel somewhere?
We had a first
Did
read.
you? Okay,
Yeah.
that's my bad.
But it was a long time ago.
Okay,
Yep.
it was a long time ago. All right, because I mean, so regardless of that, I still read it now, and I still have areas for input, and I'm not sure how we get that integrated in before we would take a vote. So let me give the input and then see what people think. The first one is on goal number 1, under direct reports. I love that all your direct reports and your administrative team will get their evals done, but like, you're leading a district, and one issue that we see is that some of the people you're leading don't do all theirs. Could we have a percentage that includes administrators across the district will complete 95% of performance evaluations or something? I don't, we're going into executive session, and I feel like I'm in there a lot because those evals aren't happening of your, not, you do your work, but do your direct reports do their work? And that's something, in the end of the day, the buck stops back with you on that piece. So I'd like some sort of like goal that ties back to you about the evaluations that other people do. I know you probably, that's not happy, that's been hard for many people to accomplish, but I would love to see that accomplished.
I have a question before you answer that. Wouldn't that be part of their evaluation? So like, if they're right, so they have to evaluate their peoples, right? And then as part of their evaluation, Dr. Z looks at it and says, you have completed 50% of your evaluations. That is then reflected in theirs, right?
Right.
So it's,
And for us, as a school committee who's supervising a district, which Dr. Z is supervising for us, right? Like, there's this piece where we know that we're repeatedly in hot water because people aren't being evaluated. And so how do we make that piece happen? Can we ask Dr. Z, yes, she can include it, but then she can report back to us on X% didn't, and then those who didn't, I did, X or Y to try and remediate that issue.
So I'm going to jump in and say, if I go back to the rubric itself, even under exemplary, it says models this process through the superintendent's own evaluation process and goals. So it's like supporting administrators to develop and attain their SMART goals, guidance and support, and monitoring for all administrators to ensure they observe and provide useful feedback to faculty and staff, frequent observations of and feedback to administrators. I also would like to say, Bridget, like for me, can we do scaffolded steps? Can we first get the administrators to be evaluated? Because that's the question you haven't asked. You didn't ask for clarity to say, hey, Dr. Z.
What's your baseline?
What's your baseline, and even having the administrators be evaluated. So the scaffolding in those steps is, let me make sure first, let's get them to go through an evaluation process as leaders and evaluate them and provide them that support. And then work on them on the next step of how are you evaluating your staff versus skipping straight down to pushing them to evaluate their staff. So that was the thinking of it for me.
I don't feel like ready to wait that long, because that'd be like a lengthy cycle. And I mean, it's part of your job when you're, anybody who has direct reports has to evaluate them. That's like one of the parts of the job. So I like setting that as a goal for you is great, but like you're leading them in doing it, I guess. I think I don't feel like I would want to wait. And then the only other thing, I thought goal 4 looked great. Goal 3 is Pelham. Goal 2, it says you'll hold sessions. And I like that there's sessions being held. But I think for me, what's more important than like holding sessions and presenting sessions to people about the changes that are happening is like receiving and integrating the feedback, alleviating concerns, smoothing bumps in the road as those come up in the shape of the redistricting. So those are pieces that that I'd love to see reflected somehow here in the goals.
So under evidence, it says feedback summaries. Did you see that part? And so I think that is captured, to me, I was framing it in the feedback received, and then you see that there's a restructuring readiness, lessons learned from planning phases. So also in the qualitative is kind of talking about that reflection, like what the feedback was as we staggered through and we went through, even how we incorporated it, what did that look like, what did we learn from it. So I'm not sure what specifically you're saying you would have wanted.
Okay, I think it was just the language on the second bullet point. Under implementation, it just said, hold at least 4, communicate timeline progress and next steps. It sounded like a little unidirectional. If that's what you intend with feedback summaries?
So that's what I intend to do, but the evidence is what I intend to give. So I intend to hold these engagement sessions and communicate the timeline progress. If you'd like me to say, gather feedback, I could put that in there. But to me, it's just assumed that there are additional steps outside of these 3 bullets. I just put some very general implementation plan steps there because in one of the feedback when I had first presented my goals was, well, I would like to see some sample action steps of what it is you're going to do. This is where the implementation plan section came from. So the evidence for me was really where I wanted to make sure it was clear to the committee what I was going to give. And that to me is where I put feedback summaries and different things. So I guess it's all about where we're focusing on the attention.
Jennifer?
It was September 23rd that we first looked at these, which does feel like a lifetime ago, actually. So I'm hearing suggestions and suggested edits, and I'm hearing Dr. Z take in some of the suggested edits. I feel like it's November, and we should probably vote on these tonight. So I'm going to make a motion for the region that we approve the superintendent's goals, including any suggestions or edits made by the committee that the superintendent accepts.
Second.
All right. Any final discussion? Yep. Oh, boy. Okay.
Very quick.
Yep. We'll just go Sarah, Deb, and then William.
Yeah, just that if the superintendent does make any edits, that we get back the final, so we know what, what it actually is, if it changed, that's all.
I just wanted to know which of the goals corresponds to the student learning goal and professional practice goal, because I got the 2 district improvement goals, but so that document that you sent, that we had from DESE at the last meeting, that was attached, the 2019 DESE something something. I have it. It had the rubric in it, but this one. right? That's what was, that was,
Remember when we met with HR, we clarified which correct rubric we were going to use?
then I thought this is what was attached to the agenda.
That was the one that I pulled off of DESI, but was unclear, because we were talking about it, so I attached it, but unclear about which was the most updated one.
But we weren't using the MASC one. That was the
Right.
that
Right,
was
we
the
were using the
distinction. So
DESI one.
this is the DESI one. It just says that there's supposed to be one professional practice, one learning, and two district improvement goals. And I didn't. Nobody looks like they have any idea what I'm talking about.
I think that's correct.
So, on page 7, no, on page,
That's my memory as well.
all right. Give me a second. I mean, this was just a question, I don't think we discussed it at length in the committee. We discussed the tool, we discussed the goals, we discussed the evidence. I just thought this was just the last, we have one goal for each standard or indicator, I don't know. Standard and one indicator for each, no, actually, there's several indicators for some of the standards. But back here on page, there's an appendix A. No, appendix C. And it says end of cycle summative evaluation report for the superintendent. Superintendents must identify at least one student learning goal, one professional practice goal, and 2 to 4 district improvement goals. I think the district improvement goals are the second and fourth goals. And then I couldn't figure out which of these two were the professional practice 1 and 4. One would be, I mean, there's a lot built into goal 4. It's communications, which is like really important. And I think it's well fleshed out here. I just don't know if that's counts as a student learning goal or professional practice goal.
Can I see the document here?
Yeah. Well, that's the page. It's at the very top. The first one in that.
Yes, I have that. I was trying to figure out what document this is.
That's just those pages from the document. You want the whole document?
And what page were you on in this one?
It's appendix C.
Sorry.
Too many things.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Yes.
We will have a mid-cycle assessment, right? Or check-in.
Yes.
So maybe at that point, if something needs to be identified as this, that, or the other,
I think
do it
we
then?
should do it now.
What is it that we're gonna do?
Identify which of these goals is the student learning goal.
Is that all you're looking for? Which of these goes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Instructional leadership.
I would suggest that goal 3 for Pelham would be that goal, Deb.
Okay.
Yes.
And the, what is it, 2 is for Amherst? Right? That is a lot of instructional learning and leadership,
Okay.
right? You're restructuring your everything. K
Well-
through 6, right?
I think even goal 1 can align, just not goal 4. I actually think goal 4 aligns.
Okay, so we're good. So I
I also think goal 4 would
We've
be
got
good
it
for
covered.
this.
Okay.
They're just not
That's-
necessarily
I'm good now. Thank you.
spelled out
Thank you for,
like that.
thank
Okay.
you all for
sharing that with me.
All right.
I-
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you for making motions so you keep it forward. I didn't get to say a few things yet, so I'm going to talk about the motion and a few things. One of my questions was how we're going to like show progress, and then other people answered that, so thank you. You're going to put it in board docs or whatever it's
Yeah.
called. Perform, whatever.
Perform.
It's going to be there, so thank you.
Board docs.
I guess one thing, and this may be for like the future, but like what specific student impacts are there? I feel like these are all like adult actions. So like, where could a student voice fit in here to inform the goals? That may be a future thing, but like not future on this year, but maybe next year? To look at, like, can we bring student voice in on artifacts of how these are going or not? Just a suggestion.
So I'm going to say that, I'm going to say the politically correct answer, which is that if the school committee decides that you want to refer to students around the superintendent's evaluation for artifact development, the law states that you, at the end, can say, but we are supposed to have a collaborative conversation around what those artifacts are going to be. So I think it's adult conversation because, and adult-led, because it's the projects that I have to do as the adult. I'm not opposed to student voice. I'm going to say I don't know how that fits and how that looks. And if the school committee wants to take that and develop that, that's up to you. I just developed what I think would be best in this year. So I don't know what next year's goals are going to be, and hopefully we have them done in April.
I just was just saying maybe we could look at student voice in the future. I agree with Bridget, what she said. So on your goal number 1, the evaluations, who exactly are you evaluating? Like, what are their titles? Who are the direct reports that you're going to be at 100% completion of that? If you could remind me of who those.
I have every principal in the districts. I have the athletics director. I have the HR director. I have the 4 EDs. I have some individuals who are under them. I have Megan, I have Seth, I have Dwayne. I have about, right now, my list right now is about 20-something people.
Okay.
And some of them I share with the EDs so that we could evaluate together. Others is basically myself.
And then I would emphasize that I do think it's important for us to, today, the people you're evaluating, to hold them accountable to doing their evaluations, and it's not another year down the road.
So I also want to be mindful of how that may cross into the boundaries of being that the school committee is then jumping into personnel matters, and how I would be handling the personnel in terms of if they do what they're supposed to or not. So I would like clarity on that and how that can reflect back. So I would definitely want to consult on that one.
Well, I guess I'm not saying it needs to be here. I'm just saying I'm suggesting or hoping that when you do your evaluations of how you want to do them, because it is how you want to do them, right? That you are reflective on how they're doing their evaluations also, and hopefully that's more timely than a year from now. That's all.
Definitely.
Okay, so I have Tim, Irv, and Anna speaking to the motion, and then, like, we need to wrap it up. Go ahead, Tim, quick. You got it.
Quickly, one way that we could include student voice without needing to change the current set of goals as presented is that we can invite them in the form of the student council or other student groups to the process that we have here tonight. We will have again in meetings later this year. And that could be an educational opportunity for them as well as for us.
Thank you. Irv?
An up-to-date organizational chart would be great.
Thanks, Irv. Anna?
So I'm going to double down on Bridget and William and say that I think that ensuring that your direct reports do their evaluations is not stepping out of line for the school committee. I think that the lack of documentation, the lack of paperwork that has been done is costing this district a lot of money, and expecting you to ensure that your direct reports do their job is not out of line. And so I also don't think that saying you must ensure that your direct reports do 100% of their evaluations is a realistic goal for this year. I think we could, ensuring that your direct reports do their evaluations could be 90%, it could be 75%, it could be 95%. But I think that ensuring that your direct reports do their evaluations as well as you doing your own evaluations is not going beyond what the school committee can expect from a superintendent. I think ensuring that you are managing your employees effectively and demonstrating that by showing us how they have met your expectations is not going beyond our limits. So I think that at the very least, we would want to know how many what percentage of evaluations were done.
Okay.
But I think we should vote.
Yes. Okay. All for the region was, Jennifer, did you pretend? Write down what you said? Or can you repeat it?
I didn't, but I said.
Approve the goals.
I move that the regional school committee approve the goals, including any edits or suggestions that the school committee makes that the superintendent accepts.
Okay. All right. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Excellent. All those opposed? All abstaining? Perfect. I will move the same for the Pelham School Committee.
Second.
All right, discussion. I would like to say something. I would like to say that I think this is timely for the Pelham School, that as we look over the next few years about the future of the Pelham School, I think having this done now will be very helpful. Any other comments or discussion?
I would like to just add the same clause that Jennifer added, of any edits. I would like for school
Yes, she
committee.
moved the
I
same.
said as the same,
Thanks.
so it means what she said.
Yeah. All those in favor? All right, the vote passes unanimously. And I would like to say something. 8 years on the school committee, I spent 2 or 3 on the region, and I was part of the superintendent evaluation subcommittee, and I would like to say thank you to everybody who has worked on this, because this will be so much better than what we have done in previous years. I know last year was difficult. Years before that maybe hadn't been as difficult, but you were trying to improve. But this is just going to make such a difference in trying to do the evaluation. So whoever is on the subcommittee, thank you very, very much.
And I think we got some good support from staff on this, too.
we did.
The
Absolutely.
team was
Yes.
an important part of
Yes.
it, not that,
No.
Shout out to Jajira. William.
I was just going to quickly say that I know we still haven't done our goals. You should be there to help us with our goals. As we ridicule you on your goals, you should ridicule us on our goals.
You should tell us to bring students.
I will.
All right, this is not the right agenda, hold on. Okay, so next we have a future agenda.
Joint.
Yes,
We have
so
Talk
we,
about joint meetings future.
yes, we have, looking at the calendar and things that come up, I think the chairs will need to talk about a time that we can have another joint meeting in December. We have a bunch of policies that are going to need first and or second reads. We have a strategic plan we are going to need to vote on. We have
Calendar?
historically, we have done
First
the
read
first
calendar?
read of the district calendar in December. And then another thing that's on there is the annual HR report, which I think is probably easier to do as a joint meeting. We can have that conversation with the superintendent and HR if they want to move forward with that. So be on the lookout for another meeting. Because also the same in November, as there's only one regularly scheduled meeting, given holidays and all that jazz, then the same happens in December. Sarah?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the HR report, because I was thinking during this previous conversation about reviewing everyone in the organization, that maybe that's something that can be presented in an HR report. Like, we're striving, this year we got 60% of all of our educators or whatever reviewed or evaluated.
Okay.
Could go there.
So,
I move to adjourn the Pelham School Committee meeting.
second.
All those in favor?
We can arm wrestle for it.
You can have it.
All right. All right. Region, don't go anywhere. All right. So next, the Amherst Pelham Regional School Committee will now consider entering executive session pursuant to MAGLC 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation with M. Fleming, if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and I do declare, with no intent to return to open session.
Second.
I think we have to individually vote. We can't just raise our hand. Bridget?
Yes.
Jennifer? Yes. Sarah?
Yes.
Anna?
Yes.
Irv?
Yes.
Tim?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
William?
Yes.
And Sarah Bess. Thank you.